I haven't seen anything in relation to big earthquakes happening down in California. Is there going to be some small ones? Yeah, there's always small ones. There might be some like, and I do feel like they are getting worse because of the warming of the planet a little bit. I feel like the environment has started to kind of rise in temperature. I think this is science. This is not just me saying this. This is actually science. And, with the coming rising heat temperatures in different areas, it's going to create more bigger storms, unfortunately. In the future, not too distant future, I'm hoping, there'll be more knowledge that we have made contact with star beings and that star beings are visiting this world, and that we may even have some of their technology kicking around in different places within the world. Whether we're in this world or another one, that process of evolution and gaining a spiritual and intellectual knowledge will continue. It's always going to continue. My name is Shawn Leonard. I'm from Nova Scotia, Canada, which I'm also an Indigenous person, and my Indigenous name is White Eagle Spirit Talker. But in my language, it would be Wabak Gitbu, Agudamajik Jigamahamajik. And thank you for having me here today. Discovering my psychic abilities has been something that has been kind of evolving, all of my life. And I've written a book. The book I wrote is called Spirit Talker, and it's got a lot of my stories in here, and it's published by Hay House Publishing within the United States. But I feel each and every one of us has a story of discovery that we're evolving through, and many of our life lessons and the many things that happen to us. And I just feel very blessed and gifted that I've had these experiences and I've shared them in my book. But growing up as a young small boy, I've had many experiences where spirits would visit me. And being young, of course, you would be a little bit startled or scared, but it's something I became adjusted to. And my mom made me feel very open and feel that it was very okay for spirits to be around. And they just, because they were around because they loved us. They're watching over us. They're our ancestors. They're the people that care about us. So I became more adjusted to that when I was younger. And then as I grew older, more and more experiences happen. If I was to give you one story of when I first made connections, it was like when my great grandparents had passed away. And I was probably about 4 or 5 years old, and I was sleeping in my bedroom in Elmsdale, Nova Scotia, Canada. And I remember these two shadow people that would be standing in my room as I was sleeping. And I could hear them whispering to each other, talking to each other. And I knew that it was my great grandparents. I could hear their voices, and I knew it was them, although they no longer had their bodies anymore, but they were still there. And that did startle me a little bit. And I asked my mom to put some different lights in the room and different night lights, and that helped. I couldn't see them as strong and I slept more soundly. But I remember one night where my mom, for whatever reason, had come in and turned the night lights off. And I woke up and I could hear them speaking in the room again. I could see them speaking there. And so I covered my head with my sheets and I just kind of was, pretending that they weren't there. And eventually I felt them moving through the room, and then somebody ran their fingers through my hair. And it startled me a little bit. So I woke up and I jumped off the back of my bed and went into my mom's room and I said, Mom, now I know they love me, but I find this, scary a little bit. And she says, well, just talk to them and tell them that you're a little scared. So I did. I told them, I said, Nan, Pop, I love you so much, but please don't visit me like this in my room anymore. But I still want you to watch over me. And that was it. That was the last time that I actually saw them in that way again. And do I think that they're still watching over me? Absolutely, I do. But do I fear them? No, not at all. And I'm grateful still, even to today, that I'm going to get a good sleep. That occasionally a spirit will come into my room while I'm sleeping and wake me up. It doesn't happen very often, even at this age, and I'm 52 years old now. But I prefer that spirits come to me at a better time. I feel like, humans, I mean, obviously, I think all living things are interacting with the spirit world, whether it's consciously or unconsciously. And I think that's the difference between people who are more aware spiritually, is that they have this conscious connection to the creator, conscious connection to their ancestors, conscious connection to their guides and maybe their personal angels, etc., and even other star beings. And we are evolving to get there, and some people maybe aren't there yet. But it takes leaders. It takes people who are speakers, teachers, authors, people getting out there, and maybe even doing Zoom sessions and teaching sessions online via technology to help enrich our understanding of our connection to the spirit world. And that's why I'm here. That's why I share with my book. This is something else I have out in the world is an oracle card deck, which has like indigenous spiritual wisdom in it as well. But I'm sharing the best ways that I can. And for the length of time that I'm here within this world, our lifetimes are so short. It's so short and they're so precious to us that, we take them for granted in the time that we have here. And we've come here with all of us have come here with a distinct and definite purpose. And mine is to help people understand, who we are, remember who we are, how to connect to that, and how to move within that, within the physical world in a better way. So I'm doing that for my lifetime. In my early 20s, I started this and where I really started to kind of move into this field of life. And now I'm 52 years old. I'm hoping I have like 20 to 30 years left of my life. I mean, the average, human lifespan is about 80, let's say, or 84. That's not that long away from me. But with the time that I have, in my understanding, my connection, I want to help people understand as greatly as I can with the time that I have here until I return home, till I go back home to spirit, and then I make the decision about my journey. In the coming years and the future of humanity, I feel like we're going to go through lots of like, let's say, growing pains. I don't think there's ever a time that we've not gone through growing pains, unfortunately. And, we've not evolved to a place where we've stopped fighting and having wars. And, the human ego is still very prevalent within the world. And, that we have to be better or greater than other people, that we can't be equals. So I think we're going to keep experiencing negative things, let's say, until we say, hey, this is enough. There's going to be things that happen in the world to show us that this is not balance. A religion that dictates that you go out and blow people up is not working for humanity. We have to be one nation, despite our maybe cultural differences and maybe the way that we approach spirit in some way. But we need to kind of come together and have some type of universal way that we do approach spirit together. And, I think it's very important for that to happen. Unfortunately, the war that's going on in Ukraine will eventually stop. It would have to. I mean, no wars have been continued on for forever. Let's say it goes on for another potential year, I say, and then I feel like it will end. This isn't the first time that they've been in this situation, Ukraine and Russia. This has happened in the past, and they obviously did not learn what they needed to learn from the first time. This is where history repeats itself. And history will continue to repeat itself in the world until we say, hey, that didn't work before. We need to shift. We need to change. And again, these people are brothers and sisters, for God's sakes. They're from the same continent of people. Why can't they get along? Why can't they support each other? Why can't they have a trade agreement of some sort where they help each other as opposed to thinking, I have to own you? I mean, that's ego. And I wish Russia would look at things so differently. I wish Vladimir Putin would look at things so differently. And, I don't think Ukraine is going after Russia going, hey, we want your land, we want your resources, we want your people. That's not happening. They're like, we want our independence. We want to stay who we are. And Russia, unfortunately, is a very large country with a lot of power and a lot of money. And, I feel like they need to, be globally the biggest, powerhouse in the world somehow. And whether it's through loss or resources, with land or resources, etc. I just feel like they've got the wrong approach, and I think they need to evolve a little bit more there. And I don't blame the Russian people; I blame their leaders, unfortunately. And if Vladimir Putin, if you were literally like listening to me say this, please, please stop. Please think about, you know, everyone, not just Russia. Think about the human nation. Think about humanity. Think about how we need to love and support each other in the greatest way we can. We need to find peace, not war and conquering. That's happened so much for so long. And we can't do that. We can't continue this process. We have to be one nation, not necessarily one government, but we have to be one nation that supports each other. We have to be the human nation. I haven't seen anything in relation to big earthquakes happening down in California. Is there going to be some small ones? Yeah, there's always small ones. There might be some like, 4.0s or something like that in the next few years, but that's not too scary in the big scheme of things. I don't feel like, California's going to crack off into the ocean or anything like that. There may be some shakeups, but nothing really major. Well, I do feel like with hurricanes, they are seen to be getting stronger within the world in different locations, especially where there's warmer climates. And I'm not where I live, I live in a cold climate. I'm in Canada. But on the Atlantic Ocean, every year there's every year or every 2 years there's a hurricane that makes its way up, and I do feel like they are getting worse because of the warming of the planet a little bit. I feel like the environment has started to kind of rise in temperature. I think this is science. This is not just me saying this. This is actually science. And with the coming rising heat temperatures in different areas, it's going to create more bigger storms, unfortunately. And, hopefully when these things happen, we'll start to think about the environment, think about Mother Earth greater, and, how we're affecting it and how we can change that. And there's ways that we can do that. Like even today, I know that we still use fossil fuels for the predominant way that we drive around our vehicles, etc. That's probably a huge aspect of carbon footprint that goes out into our atmosphere, which warms up our world with greenhouse gases, etc. But I think we are advancing. I wish it would be a little bit quicker. And I know there's different companies out in the world that we're advancing in our battery technologies and et cetera, so that we can kind of move away from gas and fossil fuels, et cetera. And I know Toyota, and I'm a big fan of Toyota because I always buy Toyota trucks and Toyota cars, etc. I know in about 2 to 3 years, they have a vehicle coming out that has solid state battery technology. And it's supposed to drive 1,200 kilometers with a 10-minute charge. I mean, that literally could change our environment very quickly if we were kind of, as humanity, to implement that as quickly as we could, for as great as we could. I'm not saying that transport trucks or other vehicles would still have to use diesel, etc., but cutting that carbon footprint down as greatly as we can to help our world be healthier and well. As like I said, the advanced civilizations that I saw in other worlds, their worlds were pristine. The water was clear. The trees were healthy. They didn't pollute their environment. So it didn't create big storm systems within the world. But unfortunately, because of there's a cause and effect, we are affecting our environment, and there's going to be, an effect of these storms that are going to become greater and greater. And hopefully, it's not too late for us to kind of shift to battery technology. And as they improve, and I said we're right on the cusp of this now in regard to technology, in regard to our cars, perhaps even our homes. Like I just had my home installed with a bunch of solar panels. I've got 43 panels on my roof, and I'm looking to use that electricity to kind of power my home. My water is given to me by rainwater, so I'm trying to move as greatly as I can in the direction of protecting Mother Earth and my environment, and because I want my ancestors and my next 7 generations and the 7 generations of all people to continue to live life as good as they can. I don't just care about me and now, I care about those 7 generations that move forward beyond me, and hopefully even more beyond the 7 generations. Will there be food and energy crisis in the US? I don't feel like there will be an energy crisis. It just depends on whether or not how they wish to create that energy. I think we have the wisdom today to create energy in a much greater and smarter way. I think there's they're creating on systems that can power whole cities. And I know that we have the technology for that, and it's cold fusion instead of nuclear fusion. I think nuclear is kind of like maybe a negative. I mean, obviously, nuclear is not probably the answer to everything, but I think cold fusion might be the way to go, and I think we're advancing that very quickly. And I think even China and other countries and the US and other places in Europe have been working on this. And I think we're very, very close to creating a renewable energy that continues, that operates as the sun does. So we won't have an energy shortage. Could we have a food shortage? Yes. I mean, if we, because of farmers and the way that they are approaching farming is not necessarily the best way, because I feel like we've gone away from the natural way. We started to use pesticides, genetically engineer or modify. And unfortunately, I feel like when we start messing with nature, we could really screw it up. And I'm hoping that, and I think more and more people are starting to go back to like organic as best as they can. Myself, I mean, I'm very lucky in Canada. I have a very limited growing season, but I have my own little garden, and I grow some vegetables, and I really enjoy that. I really enjoy the growing of things myself. Hopefully, more people in the world will find local community farms or find more organic places, and maybe as the genetically modified stuff, because I just don't think it's healthy for us. I don't think it's healthy for farming, and I think we shouldn't mess with nature in that way. But there could be a food shortage because of the way we're messing with the genetics of the crops that we eat and the environment changing as well. The combination of the two could create and cause some food shortages. But I wouldn't panic. We can still enrich our own soil. You can compost your food. You can put in the soil that's in behind your house if you possibly. You can, have a few planters and grow some things if you could. There's ways that we can, support and supply for ourselves. But we need, as humans, the human nation, to take more initiative, each and every one of us, to help feed ourselves as well. Well, I think the golden age of spirituality has already begun. I already feel like it started within in the world. I mean, and technology is helping us kind of like, create this space so that we can move out into the world. And I think in the future, not too distant future, I'm hoping, there'll be more knowledge that we have made contact with star beings and that star beings are visiting this world, and that we may even have some of their technology kicking around in different places within the world. And that maybe we'll learn about the beings that had, driven these ships or were in these ships, and that we'll learn about, who these beings are in some sense. So that when we see an advanced civilization, and I don't feel like your spirituality stops. I don't think it's like technology. It doesn't stop. It's not like you ever could ever learn as much as you need to about the universe. We're always going to be learning. We're always going to be growing. And whether we're in this world or another one, that process of evolution and gaining a spiritual and intellectual knowledge will continue. It's always going to continue. But I mean, I don't want to say that we've reached a pinnacle by saying, hey, we're in a golden age. But I feel like the golden age is now. It's the moment. It's the present. It's never going to stop. And we have to kind of grow beyond who we were in the past, be better than we were who in the past, so that we can move out into, the world and other worlds that exist everywhere. And I think it's important that we learn how to engage not only just our human brothers and sisters, because I mean that we still haven't figured that out, how to engage our human brothers and sisters in a good way. Once we start to kind of find this here, how could we possibly be ready to engage other beings in a good way if we can't engage ourselves in a good way? So there's still lots to be, that we need to do here. So, I feel like that, I don't really want to call them extraterrestrials because I feel like they're just star people, they're star beings. I mean, other people may call them extraterrestrials, but I think they're just people that live in other worlds, and I even feel like they live among us sometimes. I feel like there's even knowledge now that they live within our oceans and maybe within the ground in different places, and they're being seen everywhere. And what roles are they playing? They're helping us see. I mean, obviously they're here observing us. They're here observing us and wanting us to completely understand, the evolutionary process. I mean, I feel like they're, for the most part, for the beings that I've connected to, very spiritually balanced. Is there other beings out there that maybe aren't? Perhaps. I feel like I've connected to one civilization that probably wasn't as spiritual as maybe most of them are, but I feel like that predominantly, let's say 99% of the beings that I've connected to are very spiritual. They know their connection within the universe. They know their connection, to all living things and honor all living things in a good way. Because that's why when they visit here, they're not doing harm to us in such a way where because they could literally, with their technology that we don't have, perhaps destroy our world, destroy humanity, and take it for themselves. But they're not doing that. What they are doing is showing us different capabilities. They're almost letting us see certain things so that we can aspire to be greater, to aspire to think bigger, to aspire to what's possible. And they do have a role in relation to that. And I think that maybe with certain people, like I know that one is connecting me very strongly, particularly to give me a vision of what our world could look like. I know they must be connecting to other people. And as they connect to other people, I'm sure they're inspiring them with knowledge and wisdom to not only make our world greater, to help make humanity greater, so that when we become, their co-brother or sister out in the universe as we move beyond our own solar system, that we'll be able to approach them in an equal and good way. And I feel like that's very important for humanity to kind of know. And right now, I mean, there's wars. I mean, between everyone. It's just, and even there, we talk bad about people, and there's a war between Russia and Ukraine, and there's always the U.S. and China are always like worried about different things. And I think it's sad because that's not human how humanity should be. We have to be a human nation upon Mother Earth and work together in some way, and not there to knock down one to make yourself stronger, but to help the whole world be strong together. And I know that they have achieved this way of living themselves. I don't think they would divide themselves by race or religion or culture in any way. They would celebrate those things together. And we need to know how and honor that wisdom of togetherness so that we together can approach, these nations as we move forward out into, these other worlds in the future. I think it's a natural part of progression to go from a 3D to a 5D world, and where we're deeply connected between this world and the other realms of energy, and not within just this world, but there's other worlds out there, other beings that I mean, we're all spirit, and we've taken temporarily form into these human forms, and we're going to return the spirit, and could be within this world. And in indigenous culture, we have a teaching. As an indigenous person that I learned from elders through my filming my TV show Spirit Talker, I've met many. And one of the teachings I received was how when we look up to the Milky Way, to all the stars within the Milky Way, that when we leave this form, our spirit, when we go to the spirit world, we make decisions about where we potentially could go in the future. If we're going to stay here in this world and reincarnate in the future, or we possibly go with our soul group and go to one of the other many star systems and, start a new existence in a new form. But still the essence of who we are, that light, that unconditional loving light that's inside every one of us, is transdimensional and transworldly. We could go to many other like places and locations, and they have their own other sides and own spirit worlds, etc. And I've met a few of these beings over my time, and they're much more spiritual than we are in so many ways, from what I've learned. But I don't see, it may take some people within this world a bit of time to kind of, find this kind of like knowledge or this wisdom to kind of elevate themselves into a higher level of energy. But that's okay. I mean, you literally have forever. And, I would say, through spiritual work, spiritual practice, your own personal ceremonies, and whatever culture you're from, it's important that you have a spirituality base to kind of help you to, make your way through life, tools for life in a sense, and then transcend this kind of form or this realm of reality that we all live in. I do believe that we will achieve balance between technology and spirituality. I mean, lately, technology has been really advancing in the last, say, 100 years compared to humanity's past history. And that's good. And I do feel like there's a lot of reasons for that. We need to become more technological in certain ways so that we can, connect to other beings in other worlds, and maybe even potentially, hopefully in the next 7 generations, that we may travel to other worlds ourselves and we'll physically, not just spiritually, we'll be able to live in other places. So technology is an aspect to that. But in relation to the spiritual aspect of it, we need to have a good spiritual base, spiritual grounding. And you know what? That spirituality within humanity in all cultures around the world has been very strong up till a little bit about now. And I think, the good thing is with technology is that we're able to, you know, learn more about spirituality to help us go deeper and help us to learn more, help us to learn more about meditation, about different levels of energy and even psychic abilities. Because as we advance and evolve, when we go out and reach out to the stars, it's going to have to be a balance. Because I mean, right now, humanity, we're a little out of balance because I think there's overpopulation a little bit within the world, a lot of pollution, and from what I've seen from my other, I say, brothers, star beings and star brothers from out in the universe, I've seen that their worlds, because I've had glimpses of their worlds, I've had dreams where I visited these different worlds, that they're pristine. The environment is like immaculate. The grass, the leaves, the trees, the water are so pure. And they love their world so unconditionally. They care for it in such a great way. And now, even though that they're very highly advanced through their technology, they still care about the world in such a profound and great way. Because they know that, the Mother Earth, like the one we live upon, is so important to give us that time to reach the next 7 generations at least to reach the other stars. And we can't go into other star systems or other places where we visit if we're carrying well, I'll call it the mind virus that we may have a little bit in a sense of the pollution and the uncare. Now, indigenous people particularly, it's something that we were richly deeply connected to as Mother Earth and the trees and the honoring of the water, the forest, etc. And I think it's important that we remember this and that we remember balance, and that so when we do reach, the stars of the next 7 generations, that we are able to do it in a good way. If I was to give people any guidance in relation to not using technology to connect, because I mean, even though I'm speaking about connecting through technology as we're sharing through a video, turn everything off. And I'd say, we're always very busy in life. We need to find a way to create stillness within ourselves because most of us have spirit communicating to us. Most of us have spirit that is guiding us, but we have to become more still, silent, meditative, stilling the mind a little bit, our mind voices. Because if we do, we'd be able to hear, we'd be able to receive more intuition, more insight, etc. And I think that we need to speak with our voice, maybe having a sacred space. I often, down here in the woods near my home, I have a spot I can go and just sit in the forest and I have a little conversation with the spirit world. I'm disconnected from technology, I'm reconnecting to nature. And sometimes I'll sit there and I'll invite them to come to me, to invite them to inspire me, invite them to help me through a situation or an idea. And then sometimes I'll meditate and I'll create space so that I can receive an impression, a thought, a message, a guidance, or a direction. And, my people, my indigenous people, the Mi'kmaq people of Eastern Canada, of Turtle Island, what we call Turtle Island, all of North America, is we have had ceremonies to connect. And I'll tell you about one particularly. Like we have a game called Waltus. And the Waltus game is fun. It's like a wooden bowl that we have, and there's 7 dice in it that we balance, and all the pieces flip around, and we compete with another person, and it's a fun game. But we also use that bowl for ceremony too in the past. We would have taken the dice or pieces out of it, we would have filled it with water, we left it out in the moonlight for 4 nights. We would have had a pipe ceremony, we would have smudged, we would have invited the ancestors to connect to us, and after the 4 nights, the medicine person or the person who could see would sit and gaze in a meditative state, kind of blankly, mindfully, just staring into the water to receive an impression about what medicine should be picked for somebody who is ill, what message we could give somebody who is struggling in life, or what direction we could have for ourselves because we were uncertain about something. So we would gaze into the water and then we would have visions in our mind. And, today we would call that clairvoyance. But in the past, we didn't have words like that. We just saw. We just were able to see things, not with these eyes, but the eyes within us. But we had to create space, silence, and we had a ceremony to kind of celebrate that. And then we'd receive insight. Now, today, with the work I do as a spirit talker, with the TV show that I do, it's no different in a sense. I don't do that exact ceremony, but I still take time outside. I meditate, I pray, I invite, and then I create space, a mindfulness to receive information from the spirit world. And then I'm able to help and guide other people accordingly. Well, I would say if you're looking for me out in the world, the best place to find me is shawn-leonard.com, which is SHAWN hyphen the middle line, Leonard, LEONARD.com. And you can find my book, my card deck. You can find about where I tour, my TV show, etc. And if you want to message me, I'd really like that too. And you can always sign up for my email list. If you sign up for my email list, I give out a couple of free gifts. I give a free meditation to connect to your guides, and I give 5 spiritual tips about developing your intuition. So please feel free to sign up for my email address. And I just want to say thank you. In my language, we say Wilalin, which means thank you. I could say Wilalio means I thank everyone. We don't ever say goodbye because we don't believe in goodbyes. Because we will always exist, whether it's in this form or another form. We always say Namultus, up the multus, which means I'll see you again.